Hey, Lior, thanks for joining me here today.
How do you do?
I'm doing great. Lior is an attorney, a real estate attorney that I've known for a very long time, done a tremendous amount of business with together, and highly recommend. And
Thank you.
today, thank you, Lior, for taking the time here to go through this with me. What I'd like to go through is describe what are the costs for a seller when selling their home. And then after we do that, we can discuss the costs for a buyer when purchasing their property. And let's look at it if somebody has a co-op or if somebody has a condo. So let's start off with a condo. Um, let's say I'm representing a seller of a condo. What costs should they keep in mind when selling the condominium?
Fair enough. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it. So what we do is we always want to know how much is the price associated because it makes a difference from the seller's perspective. What is the price range? Okay. The price on the state transfer tax has been recently modified, and I can show you. What we do is I highly recommend going to our law firm's website, if I can share that screen with you.
Please.
And and then once you go to the website, you would hit, of course, 26 years of
We
experience.
don't see it yet, though. Sorry, it's not on the screen.
Oh, it's not shared yet. Okay, fair enough. Hold on, please. You see it now.
It says Lior has started sharing the screen, but there we go. Now it showed up.
Okay,
Beautiful
fair
website.
enough. So this is our law firm website. It's aldadlaw.com. And we are at the Empire State Building. It's a beautiful website. Everybody is part of our extended family. That's our slogan. We care about all. All right. And you can see here, this is the book that I published. I was on many for a long time on the radio. I had my own show on 7:10 a.m. And I've been nominated for several years as New York Super Lawyers, located at the Empire State Building, etc., etc. Okay, you can go to press and you can see that I was written about in the New York Times, and I was on New York One, etc. Anyway, and then we have testimonial, but what we care about is closing costs. Okay, so you go to closing costs, and in a condo you will look at the seller's closing cost, and the seller pays city and state transfer taxes, which is 0.4% on the state for anything under 3 million. And recently, above 3 million, they changed that to 0.65% on the state transfer tax. And the city transfer tax for 500 or less is 1%, and over 500 is 1.425. So most transactions above 500 kick in at 1.825. I'm combining these two numbers. Or if it's under 500, it kicks in at 1.4%. Okay. And then you would add 0.65 for transactions over 3 million plus the 1.425%. Managing agent will probably charge you 450. There may be a move out deposit refundable. There may be a move out fee sometimes. And then you have the brokers at 6%. All right. So usually we go around 8%, which is for anything under 3 million, of course, which is your 6% plus 1.825. And we round it up as 2%. And therefore 6 plus 2 equals 8, including our fee. On the co-op, it is exactly the same thing. Okay. Except in a co-op, you may have a flip tax. It's dependent on which apartment, which building it is. It may or may not have a flip tax. Flip tax is defined as a self-imposed fee that the building charges. It may not have any. Some buildings impose the flip tax on the buyer side, not necessarily the seller side. That's also negotiable. And usually you have a payoff bank, which would pay off the loan. Since it's shares of stock, they come to the table, and you'll have a move out deposit and a UCC filing fee. This would be your co-op closing costs as a seller and your condo closing costs as the seller. Okay.
Great, fantastic. So pretty much, if you're a seller of a co-op or a condo, you're looking at approximately 2% roughly. That 1.825, give or take, depending on, if you're over
Right.
3 million or not. And then, some of these, additional costs. Is that a fair,
Fair enough.
number?
We usually round it up on a condo to 8%, and on the co-op, it's 8% plus whatever flip tax is associated.
Right.
Sometimes the flip tax is very high because sometimes the building may charge on the premise of profit or capital gain. Sometimes the building charges on the basis of percentage overall. Sometimes they charge on an amount times number of shares of stock. It's dependent on each building. Okay.
Gotcha. And one other thing is there are some buildings out there that they say that the buyer will pay the flip tax.
Yes.
It's very unusual. So sometimes it's there, but I would caution you as a seller that when it does say that, sometimes these things are negotiable.
Correct.
And so just something to think about. So, okay, now let's jump on to the buyer side. Now, let's say you are a buyer and you have the lucky opportunity.
Right. So buying a co-op is very much not as expensive as buying a condo, okay? Because when you buy a co-op, New York State defines your shares of stock as personal property, and you do not have mortgage insurance or title insurance or New York State mortgage tax. None of those are applicable when you buy a co-op. Buying a co-op is the least expensive means of buying an asset in New York. Therefore, you don't have mortgage tax. Like I said, you don't have title insurance, you don't have a mortgage, title insurance, etc. If it's over $1 million and in New York City, they came up recently with a new mansion tax. They can see here, okay? Only in New York City, and this mansion tax is, if it's under 2 million, it's 1%, like we're accustomed to. But now they modified a breakdown of much more New York State mansion tax. You may have a lien search of 300. You may have our fee and some miscellaneous and bank fees. That's it.
So you'll have these mortgage bank fees, but those are going to be different than what we're going to see in a second on the condominium side. For the mortgage front.
Buying a condo is much more expensive in terms of closing costs, but you are not subjected to, pursuant to Section 6 of the standard co-op contract, subjected to the co-op consent and board approval, which, by the way, such consent can be subjective and not objective without discrimination. So in a condo, you would have a right of first refusal unless you're buying from a sponsor or a developer and new construction. In a co-op, you would have the board approval, and consent can be for any reason, so long as it's not discriminatory.
Great.
Okay?
Now let's look at the condo. Let's look at the more expensive closing costs for a buyer.
A side note, this particular website is amazing. It also has a monthly mortgage calculator if you want to use that as a tool. But let's continue with this. In a condo, you would need what is known as title insurance. It's a one-time fee.
If you don't mind just start from the top, that you've gone through mortgage bank fees. Let's just go through them one by one very quickly.
Fair enough. So we have points. If you want to reduce your interest rate, you would pay a point. Some people do, some people don't. You have an application, you have an appraisal, an application fee, a bank lawyer, short-term interest, tax escrows. So because you're paying real estate taxes, the bank may escrow and put aside certain sum as a cushion. So to make sure that you are, in fact, going to be paying your real estate taxes. So your closing costs, you have to factor that in. You have your New York State mortgage tax, depending on how much you're borrowing. You would have recording fee. That would be to record your deed in the country, in the county registrar's office. You would have the mansion tax, and I said same thing as in the co-op below. The mansion tax is broken down. It's also affiliated with this condo. You would have our fee, management fee, title insurance, one-time fee to confirm that you are the rightful owner without any encumbrances, such as mechanic liens, judgments, or anything outstanding against seller's mortgage, or anything outstanding against the property. Clear, you are trying to buy clear, marketable title. You will have your mortgage title insurance that's required by New York, so the bank will ask you to get insurance for them, slightly less expensive depending on how much you are borrowing. and then you would have your move-in deposit and other closing adjustments.
So
Right.
the biggest costs in a condo, okay? The biggest cost here is you have the title insurance, which is
Right.
675 per 100,000, right? So if you're buying a,
About, yes.
so let's say you're buying a $2 million property, right? Let's do $1 million property. It's $6,750
Right.
towards your title insurance.
Correct.
And
About,
then you still have your mortgage insurance
right.
of 500, so it's going to be another 5,000. So you're at like 11,000 plus for the mortgage and title that you don't have on the co-op.
Right. Furthermore, correct. Furthermore, if you're buying from a sponsor, although it's negotiable, you would be paying all of the seller's cost on the left side as part of the standard routine acquisition, unless you have a super broker like yourself who's able to negotiate and have the seller pick this up, or the seller pay his own transfer tax. Short of that, or in other words, if it's not negotiated, in a sponsor acquisition, it's important to know, in a sponsor acquisition, you would be paying the city and state transfer tax and the seller's lawyer and other associated fees as per the offering plan on the seller side.
Perfect. Terrific.
And in sum, if adding these fees kicks it over the $1 million, because New York City considers these fees being paid by the buyer as consideration, and if it's over $1 million all of a sudden and not negotiated otherwise, you would pay the mansion tax. So if you're going at 980, buying from a sponsor unnegotiated, 980 would bring it over $1 million. Consider another $10,000 mansion tax.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, great. Lior, thank you very much for sharing this with us. Of course, at the end of the day, if you're looking to sell your property, if you're looking to buy your property, you should have a conversation with Lior, because some of those numbers there are approximate and there's some further details that need to be, analyzed and discussed in that regard. It depends where you're buying a property. So definitely super important to have a conversation with an attorney. And obviously Lior would be a great person to reach out to for that. And otherwise, if you have any questions, of course, reach out to me as well. And thank you so much for watching this video. Lior, thank you very much for putting it together. And
My
all right,
pleasure.
I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Thank you.